They tried to erase humanity, until we unveiled Project NEMESIS. Chapter 1. The Erasure Protocol. The chamber was carved from living bone. Admiral Helena Cross stood at the center of the hegemony's judgment hall, her boots clicking against the polished calcium floor that still pulsed with faint neural activity. Above her, the Council of Seven loomed on their bone thrones, each member representing a different species of the galactic hegemony. Their faces, some scaled, some chitinous, some made of crystalline matrices, showed no emotion as they pronounced humanity's death sentence. High Hierarch Zephon spoke first, his voice a harmonic vibration that emanated from the crystal formation along his cranium. The Valix were beings of pure mineral consciousness, and when they spoke, reality itself seemed to bend around their words. Species Index 7739 Terran. Zephon intoned. You stand accused of systematic violation of the biological preservation codes. Your expansion patterns threaten 17 established biospheres. Your military doctrine prioritizes conquest over coexistence. Admiral Cross remained motionless, her dress uniform immaculate, despite the 14-hour journey from Earth's outer defense grid. Her graying hair was pulled back in regulation style, and her augmented left eye, a battlefield souvenir from the Proxima campaign, recorded every word, every gesture, every micro-expression of her judges. We came in peace, Cross said, her voice cutting through the chamber's acoustic dampeners. Every first contact protocol was followed. Every territorial dispute was submitted to arbitration. Councillor Thakmor, a Bruton whose exoskeleton had been polished to mirror brightness, clicked his mandibles in what might have been amusement. Your peace is armed expansion. Your arbitration is ultimatum wrapped in diplomacy. Cross's jaw tightened. The Bruton had been humanity's first contact 70 years ago. What began as cautious trade had devolved into territorial disputes when human colonies grew too close to their sacred spawning worlds. The evidence is conclusive, continued Hierarch Zephon. Analysis of Terran behavioral patterns across 1,247 documented encounters shows a 97.3% correlation with historical extinction events in 17 galactic sectors. A new voice joined the chorus. Matriarch Veltar of the Sith Collective. Her form was barely visible within a containment field of swirling gases, her consciousness distributed across billions of microscopic organisms that could survive in any environment. When she spoke, it was with the voice of wind through dead leaves. The Terran species exhibits what our psychohistorians term aggressive adaptation syndrome, Veltar whispered. They do not merely survive, they consume. They do not coexist, they dominate. In 847 years of expansion, they have forced the relocation of 12 sentient species. Cross felt her augmented eye heating up as it processed the emotional stress. Those species were compensated. New worlds, new resources, protection from threats you created, interrupted War Prime Korvac of the Drachenreich. The reptilian humanoid's voice was a low rumble that made the bone floor vibrate. Your expansion creates resource conflicts. Your technology accelerates evolutionary pressure. Your very presence destabilizes established order. The final three councillors had remained silent. The ethereal collective representative, a shifting humanoid form that existed partially in subspace, the machine consciousness of Nexus 7, and the ancient keeper Valdris, whose species had ruled this sector for 10,000 years before retreating into contemplative isolation. Hierarch Zephon raised one crystalline appendage. The vote is called. The Erasure Protocol will now be submitted to the Council. Cross stepped forward. You're talking about genocide? We are talking about prevention, Zephon replied without emotion. The Erasure Protocol is not extinction, it is correction. Your species will be returned to your homeworld. All extrasolar colonies will be dissolved. All military assets beyond your home system will be confiscated or destroyed. all technological advancement beyond pre-spaceflight levels will be removed. The vote was swift. 7 voices spoke in unison. Approved. Admiral Cross stood alone in the chamber as the ruling echoed through space. Around her, the bone walls seemed to pulse with satisfaction. You have 72 standard hours to begin withdrawal procedures, Zephon announced. Compliance is not optional. Resistance will be met with containment. As the council chamber began to dissolve around her, a sophisticated holographic environment, Cross found herself back aboard her flagship, the US Defiance *. The bridge crew looked at her with silent questions. Captain Marcus Webb, her flag captain, stepped forward. Orders, Admiral? Cross stared at the tactical display showing the 17 hegemony fleets converging on human space. Over 3,000 ships representing the combined military might of 7 alien civilizations. Against them, humanity could field perhaps 400 vessels scattered across 50 systems. Signal Fleet Command, she said quietly. Priority Alpha encryption. Tell them it's time to activate Project NEMESIS. Webb's face went pale. Ma'am, are you certain? The Prometheus protocols were designed as a last resort. Captain. Cross interrupted, her voice sharp as vacuum. They just sentenced our entire species to technological lobotomy. If that's not a last resort, I don't know what is. Chapter 2. The Hidden Fleet. 3 days later, the first hegemony fleets arrived at the edge of human space. The assault began at the Kepler 442 system, humanity's furthest colony. Admiral Cross watched from the bridge of Defiance as her tactical display updated with cold clinical data. Colony ships evacuating. Defense platforms going dark. The hegemony advance units, sleek Valix crystalline vessels that moved like living thoughts through space, began their work with surgical precision. They're not destroying anything, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen from the sensor station. They're disabling, stripping technology, taking prisoners. Cross nodded grimly. The erasure protocol wasn't murder. It was forcible devolution. Humanity would survive, but as a primitive species trapped on Earth, their memories of the stars gradually fading over generations. Admiral, Captain Webb called out. We're receiving a transmission from Admiral Torres at Titan Base. The tactical display shifted to show a grizzled face Cross knew well. Admiral Roberto Torres had been her mentor at the Academy, her commanding officer during the first Bruton conflicts, and her closest friend for 30 years. He was also the only other person who knew the complete truth about Project NEMESIS. Helena, Torres said, his image crackling with quantum interference. The hegemony fleets are moving faster than projected. We're seeing coordination between species that have never worked together before. Whatever convinced them to unite against us, it's bigger than we thought. Cross felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate systems. How long until they reach Sol? At current velocity? 16 hours. Maybe less if they split into multiple attack waves. And NEMESIS? Torres's expression grew grim. All stations report ready. But Helena, once we activate the Prometheus protocols, there's no going back. The galactic balance of power will shift permanently. Cross looked around her bridge. Captain Webb, young and idealistic, believed they were fighting for survival. Lieutenant Commander Chen thought they were defending human freedom. Navigation Officer Reeves assumed they would find some diplomatic solution. None of them knew that Project NEMESIS wasn't a weapon. It was an entirely different kind of military force. Roberto, Cross said quietly, send the activation codes. All stations. Full deployment. Understood. NEMESIS station acknowledges. Prometheus is live. The transmission ended, leaving Cross alone with her thoughts and the terrible knowledge of what she had just unleashed. In deep space, beyond the orbit of Pluto, something stirred in the darkness. Chapter 3. The Awakening. NEMESIS station had been hidden in the Kuiper Belt for 15 years, disguised as a routine ice mining operation. Its true nature was known to fewer than 50 people in the entire human military hierarchy. Even the construction crews had worked on isolated sections, never seeing the complete design. Commander James Okafor floated in the zero-gravity command center, watching as dormant systems came online around him. The station's interior was a maze of corridors carved through a hollowed-out asteroid, but at its heart lay something unprecedented in human military engineering. "All sections report green," called out his tactical officer, Major Lisa Park. "Quantum entanglement networks are stable. Neural interface protocols are synchronized. The subjects are responding to activation stimuli." Okafor nodded, his stomach tight with anticipation and dread. The subjects, that clinical term barely masked what they really were. 15 years ago, when the first hegemony expansion began threatening human colonies, a small group of military scientists had proposed a radical solution to humanity's fundamental disadvantage in space warfare. Humans were individually capable, but they lacked the natural advantages other species had evolved over millions of years. The Valix could process information at crystalline matrix speeds. The Bruton had natural radiation resistance and could survive in hard vacuum. The Sith collective shared consciousness across billions of organisms. The Drachenreich had reflexes faster than human neural transmission. But humans had one advantage: they could adapt anything. "Commander," Park said, her voice barely above a whisper, "we're receiving neural handshakes from all 72 units. They're awake." Through the reinforced observation windows, Okafor could see into the biochambers. Each one contained what had once been a human volunteer, military personnel who had suffered catastrophic injuries in space conflicts, their bodies too damaged for conventional medical treatment. Now they were something else entirely. The first subject to achieve full consciousness was designated N001. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos had volunteered after losing both legs and most of her torso to a Bruthan plasma mine during the Rigel incident. Her remaining organic components, brain, heart, and portions of her nervous system, had been integrated into a biomechanical chassis that could survive in any environment. But the chassis was only the beginning. N001's new body was a fusion of human engineering and captured alien biotechnology. Valix crystalline computational nodes enhanced her processing speed. Bruthan radiation shielding protected her from energy weapons. Scythe collective sensory networks allowed her to perceive electromagnetic spectra no human had ever experienced. Drachenreich's synthetic muscle fibers gave her strength and speed beyond human limits. N001 to command. Santos's voice came through the comm system, but it was different now. Harmonic, layered with sub-frequencies that conveyed emotion and data simultaneously. Neural integration at 97%. All systems nominal, requesting mission parameters. Okafor activated his comm unit. N001. This is Commander Okafor. You are authorized for full mobility. Mission parameters will be transmitted directly to your squad leaders. Around the station, 72 individuals who had volunteered to become something beyond human began to move. They had trained in simulation for years, but this was their first activation in real combat conditions. They were no longer quite human, but they fought for humanity with a dedication that transcended species loyalty. "Commander," Major Park called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Cross. The hegemony fleets have entered the outer solar system. She's requesting immediate deployment." Okafor looked once more at the tactical display showing his transformed soldiers. Each one represented a year of research, a lifetime of sacrifice, and a gamble that might save or damn the human species. "Signal all units," he said. Operation Prometheus is authorized. Deploy immediately. In the biochambers, final preparations began. Each Nemesis soldier ran through equipment checks that would have killed unmodified humans. Vacuum exposure tests, radiation tolerance verification, neural link synchronization with weapons systems that existed only in classified files. N001. Maria Santos stood in the central deployment bay, her new form a merger of organic curves and angular mechanical precision. Her enhanced vision could see her squadmates performing similar checks, but she also sensed them through the Sith-derived neural networks that connected all Nemesis personnel. They were still individuals, but they shared a collective awareness that made them exponentially more effective as a fighting force. "All units, this is N001, Santos transmitted across their shared network. "Final equipment check. Remember your training. Remember why we volunteered." 71 acknowledgements came back, each one carrying not just tactical readiness, but emotional resonance, determination, sacrifice, and an absolute commitment to protecting the species they had left behind. "Nemesis Squad," Santos continued, "we are no longer human, but we fight for humanity. Deploy." The station's launch bays opened, and 72 figures that represented the ultimate fusion of human ingenuity and alien biology accelerated into space, moving faster and more precisely than any organic being had ever managed. Behind them, the hegemony fleets continued their approach, confident in their overwhelming numerical superiority. They had no idea what was coming. Chapter 4. First Contact. The Hegemony Advance Fleet emerged from hyperspace 12 million kilometers from Earth, their formation a perfect geometric pattern that demonstrated both tactical sophistication and casual arrogance. Admiral Cross watched from Defiance's Asterisk Bridge as 17 different ship designs, each representing a distinct alien military doctrine, arrayed themselves in what was clearly meant to be an overwhelming display of force. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Commander Chen reported, "the lead vessel is transmitting its hierarch Zephon." Cross straightened in her command chair. On screen, the bridge's main display shimmered, revealing the crystalline form of the Violix leader. Behind him, the command chamber of his flagship Equilibrium gleamed with mineral formations that pulsed with data flows visible to the naked eye. "Admiral Cross," Zephon said, his harmonic voice somehow conveying both regret and implacable determination. "You have exceeded the compliance deadline by 47 hours. This is disappointing. We needed time to organize the evacuation," Cross replied, keeping her voice steady. 17 colonies, 43 orbital installations, over 2 million civilians. Even with your advanced technology, you must understand the logistics involved. Zephon's crystalline features shifted slightly. "Our projections indicated compliance was possible within the designated time frame. Your delay suggests resistance." Cross felt the weight of every decision that had led to this moment. Around her, the bridge crew maintained perfect discipline, but she could sense their tension. They were facing the combined fleets of 7 alien civilizations, and their own reinforcements were still hours away. "We're not resisting," she said. "We're complying. But we're doing it right. Acceptable." Zephon replied, "You will provide complete manifests of all military assets in this system. All vessels with hyperspace capability will be escorted to designated containment zones. All personnel with tactical training will be evaluated for memory modification." The transmission ended, leaving Cross staring at empty space. Memory modification. They weren't just planning to steal humanity's technology. They were going to erase the knowledge of how to rebuild it. "Admiral," Captain Webb said quietly, "long-range sensors are detecting movement in the Kuiper Belt. multiple contacts, but the signatures are unusual. Cross felt her pulse quicken. Unusual how? They're not matching any known human vessel profiles, but they're definitely artificial. Speed and maneuverability are beyond our current technology specs. On the tactical display, 72 small contacts accelerated inward from the outer system. Their approach vectors were impossibly precise, and their velocity curves suggested propulsion systems that violated several known laws of physics. "Ma'am!" Chen called out. "We're receiving a transmission from the lead contact. It's coded as NEMESIS command." Cross authorized the communication channel, and Staff Sergeant Maria Santos's enhanced voice filled the bridge. The harmonic undertones were alien, but the accent was pure Chicago South Side. "Admiral Cross, this is NEMESIS. 001. 72 units deployed and inbound. Estimated time to engagement, 14 minutes. Requesting target prioritization and rules of engagement." Captain Webb stared at the tactical display. "Admiral, those contacts are moving at 7% light speed. That's impossible for human technology." Cross smiled grimly. "It is for human technology." She activated her command codes. "NEMESIS. 001. You are authorized for full engagement. Priority targets are command vessels and communication relays. Secondary priority is propulsion systems. I want them unable to coordinate or retreat." "Understood, Admiral. NEMESIS units weapons free. Beginning attack approach." On the display, the 72 contacts suddenly scattered, their formation dissolving into a complex three-dimensional pattern that seemed random until Cross realized what she was seeing. The NEMESIS soldiers were using Sith collective swarm tactics, Valix computational prediction, and Drachenreich assault doctrines, all simultaneously. They weren't just using alien technology. They were thinking like aliens. Aboard the Hegemony flagship, Hierarch Zephon observed the approaching contacts with growing unease. His crystalline computational matrix was processing thousands of variables per second, but the tactical patterns emerging from the human system made no sense. "Sensor analysis indicates 72 individual units," his tactical officer reported. The speaker was a Bruton named Korvac Tai, whose shell bore the scars of hundreds of combat operations. Size classification suggests fighter craft or powered armor. Velocity profiles indicate advanced propulsion, but energy signatures are inconsistent with known Terran technology. Zephon's consciousness touched the ship's sensor networks directly. Through crystalline interfaces that allowed thought-speed data processing, he could perceive the battlefield in ways organic minds couldn't comprehend. But what he saw disturbed him. "These units, they are not operating under standard Terran tactical doctrines," he said slowly. "The formation patterns suggest multiple species coordination. The approach vectors indicate computational capabilities beyond current human neural architecture. Perhaps they acquired alien technology through black market channels," Korvac Tai suggested. "No," Zephon replied, his harmonic voice taking on a note of genuine concern. "This is not acquired technology. This is integrated technology. These units are thinking like multiple species simultaneously." On the bridge of the Drachenreich battlecruiser Asterisk Relentless Asterisk, War Prime Korvac observed the approaching enemies with predatory interest. His enhanced reflexes and tactical instincts had been honed over 300 years of warfare, but he had never encountered anything quite like this. "The humans are moving like a Sith swarm," he growled to his tactical officer, "but their approach velocities suggest Valix computational enhancement, and their formation cohesion indicates Bruton discipline." His tactical officer, a younger Drachenreich named Saren, studied the displays with growing excitement. "Perhaps this will be more interesting than a simple erasure operation." Korvac's lips pulled back in a fierce grin, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. "Signal the fleet," Combat alert status. These humans have surprises. In the biomechanical mind of N001, Maria Santos processed battlefield data at inhuman speeds while maintaining perfect awareness of her 71 squadmates. Through their shared neural network, she could feel their individual personalities: Lieutenant Morrison's calm professionalism, Sergeant Patel's fierce determination, Corporal Zhang's analytical precision. They were no longer quite human, but their humanity remained at their core. "All units, this is N001. She transmitted. "Target assignments are loaded. Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for every human who will ever look up at the stars and dream of walking among them." 71. Acknowledgements came back, each one carrying layers of meaning that only enhanced minds could fully comprehend. The Nemesis soldiers accelerated toward the hegemony fleet, their biomechanical forms pushing through space at velocities that would have liquefied unprotected organic tissue. They were humanity's answer to galactic civilization, not through conquest or diplomacy, but through adaptation. They had become living bridges between species, carrying the best of each civilization while maintaining their core human loyalty. The battle for humanity's future was about to begin. Chapter 5. Nemesis Unleashed. The first hegemony ships to die never saw their killers coming. N047, formerly Corporal David Chen of the Mars Engineering Corps, materialized inside the Bruthen destroyer *Iron Shell*, using a combination of ethereal phasing technology and quantum tunneling principles that human scientists were still struggling to understand. His biomechanical form, designed to interface with multiple alien technologies simultaneously, allowed him to exist partially in subspace while maintaining physical cohesion. The Bruthen crew had perhaps 3 seconds to register his presence before Chen activated integrated Valix energy projection systems. Crystalline nodes along his enhanced skeleton channeled power directly from his fusion core, creating a localized electromagnetic pulse that shut down every electronic system within a 50-meter radius. In the darkness and confusion that followed, Chen methodically disabled the ship's command crew using Drachenreich combat techniques and Sith paralytic compounds secreted through modified pores in his biomechanical skin. The entire operation took 14 seconds. N047 to command, Chen transmitted through the Nemesis neural network. "Target neutralized, no casualties. Proceeding to secondary objective." Similar reports flooded the shared consciousness as Nemesis soldiers struck throughout the hegemony fleet. Each attack was precisely calibrated. Disable, don't destroy. Capture, don't kill. The goal wasn't genocide, but demonstration. Humanity could adapt to anything, including moral and tactical doctrines from species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of war. Aboard the hegemony flagship, Hierarch Zephon experienced something he hadn't felt in 3 centuries of existence: genuine confusion. His crystalline mind could process tactical data at quantum computational speeds, but the patterns emerging from the battlefield defied logical analysis. 17 ships disabled, his tactical officer reported. No signs of weapons fire, no energy discharges. The attackers are inside our vessels somehow. Zephon extended his consciousness into the ship's sensor networks, trying to understand what he was perceiving. The human units weren't behaving like any known military force. They moved through space without conventional propulsion. They penetrated hull armor without creating breaches. They appeared inside sealed compartments as if matter itself was merely a suggestion. "They are using ethereal phasing technology," he said slowly. "But that is impossible. The ethereal collective guards those secrets more closely than their own existence." "Sir," the tactical officer continued, "we're receiving reports from the disabled vessels. The attackers aren't killing crew members. They're studying them. taking biological samples, downloading data from ship systems. Zephon's crystalline form darkened as he processed this information. They are not just fighting us, they are learning from us, in real time. On the bridge of Defiance *, Admiral Cross watched the tactical display with mixed emotions. Her enhanced soldiers were performing beyond all projections, but each successful mission drove home the magnitude of what humanity had done to itself. "Admiral," Captain Webb reported, his voice tight with controlled amazement. 34 hegemony vessels have been disabled in the last 11 minutes. Our casualties are 0. Cross nodded, but her expression remained grim. "And their casualties?" "Also 0, ma'am. The NEMESIS units are following non-lethal protocols." That had been Cross's decision, and she prayed it was the right one. Project NEMESIS represented humanity's best chance for survival, but it also represented a fundamental transformation of what it meant to be human. If they began using their enhanced capabilities for systematic killing, they might save the species but lose its soul. "Signal from NEMESIS 001. Webb continued. "They're requesting permission to begin Phase 2. Cross hesitated. Phase 2 involved direct assault on the hegemony command vessels. Once that line was crossed, there would be no possibility of diplomatic resolution. "Granted," she said quietly. In space, Maria Santos received the authorization and felt a moment of almost human sadness. Through her enhanced perception, she could sense the confusion and fear radiating from the disabled hegemony ships. These weren't evil beings bent on destruction. They were military professionals following orders from a government that genuinely believed humanity posed a threat to galactic stability. But good intentions didn't make the Erasure Protocol any less genocidal. "All units," she transmitted. "Phase 2 is authorized. Target the flagships, remember. Minimal casualties, maximum psychological impact." The 72 NEMESIS soldiers changed formation, their shared consciousness allowing coordination that no unenhanced military force could achieve. They moved like extensions of a single mind while maintaining individual tactical autonomy, a fusion of Sith collective consciousness and human individual initiative. N001 selected the most challenging target, Hierarch Zephon's flagship Equilibrium *. The Valix vessel was protected by layered energy shields, point defense systems, and spatial distortion fields that made direct approach nearly impossible. Nearly. Santos activated her biomechanical modifications, feeling alien technologies integrate seamlessly with her remaining human consciousness. Valix computational nodes accelerated her thought processes to crystalline speeds. Bruton radiation shielding protected her from the flagship's energy emissions. Scythe sensory networks allowed her to perceive electromagnetic fluctuations invisible to normal vision. Drachenreich reflexes gave her reaction times measured in microseconds. And her human creativity found a solution none of those individual species had ever considered. Instead of fighting the spatial distortion fields, Santos used them as a navigation aid. The distortions created pockets of twisted space-time that she could ride like a surfer riding a wave. Her approach was impossible to predict because it followed the chaotic mathematics of distorted geometry rather than conventional ballistic trajectories. She materialized on the bridge of Equilibrium * behind Hierarch Zephon's command throne. The Valix leader spun to face her, his crystalline features shifting rapidly as his consciousness processed the implications of her presence. Around the bridge, alien crew members representing 4 different species froze in shock. "I am N001, Santos said, her enhanced voice carrying harmonic frequencies that allowed direct communication with Zephon's crystalline consciousness. "I was once Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force. I volunteered to become this because your people decided my species was too dangerous to exist. Zephon's form brightened as he channeled power from the ship's crystalline cores. You are an abomination, a fusion of technologies that were never meant to be combined. I'm an adaptation, Santos replied. It's what humans do. We learn. We grow. We become whatever we need to become to survive. She gestured around the bridge, where her enhanced senses could detect the residual energy signatures of her squad mates, completing similar infiltrations throughout the fleet. Your erasure protocol was designed to prevent human expansion. Instead, you forced us to evolve. Zephon raised his crystalline appendages, preparing to channel a focused energy discharge that could level a city block. Santos didn't move. Go ahead, she said quietly. Kill me. Kill all of us. But ask yourself this. If 72 enhanced humans can disable your entire fleet in 14 minutes, what happens when we start mass-producing NEMESIS soldiers? The energy discharge never came. Zephon's crystalline mind processed the tactical implications at quantum speeds, running thousands of probability scenarios in seconds. Every projection led to the same conclusion. Humanity had just demonstrated capabilities that made traditional military force obsolete. What do you want? He asked finally. Santos smiled, and for a moment her enhanced features carried an expression of purely human satisfaction. To talk. The real Admiral Cross is waiting for your call. Chapter 6. The New Equation. The communication channel that opened between Admiral Cross and Hierarch Zephon carried more than words. It carried the weight of species survival and the mathematics of mutually assured adaptation. On the bridge of **Defiance**, Cross stood before the main display as Zephon's crystalline form took shape in holographic light. Behind him, she could see the command bridge of **Equilibrium**, where N001 stood motionless but alert, her biomechanical presence a constant reminder of humanity's new capabilities. Admiral Cross, Zephon said, his harmonic voice carefully modulated to convey respect rather than authority. You have demonstrated capabilities that were not included in our projections. We've demonstrated adaptation, Cross replied. It's what we do when faced with extinction. Around the bridge, her crew maintained professional composure, but Cross could sense their amazement. 3 hours ago they had been facing overwhelming odds. Now they were negotiating from a position of strength that defied every military doctrine ever written. Your enhanced personnel, Zephon continued, clearly struggling with the concept. They represent a fusion of technologies that violate several fundamental principles of biological development. How long have you been developing these capabilities? Cross chose her words carefully. Project NEMESIS began as a medical research initiative. We were trying to save personnel who had suffered catastrophic injuries in space operations. The military applications became apparent later. It was mostly true. The medical angle had been genuine. Dr. Sarah Kim's original research had focused on using alien biotechnology to treat otherwise hopeless cases. But the military potential had been recognized from the beginning. The volunteers underwent radical transformation, Cross continued. They're no longer quite human, but they fight for humanity with absolute dedication. They've retained their individuality while gaining access to the collective advantages of multiple species. Zephon's crystalline features shifted, displaying the Valix equivalent of deep thought. This presents a significantly altered strategic equation. Our projections for the erasure protocol were based on conventional human capabilities. Your projections were wrong, Cross said bluntly. You assumed we would remain static. You assumed we couldn't learn from you, couldn't adapt your own advantages to our purposes. On the tactical display, the disabled hegemony vessels hung in space like monuments to miscalculation. Of the original assault fleet, over half had been neutralized without a single loss of life on either side. "Admiral," Captain Webb whispered, "we're receiving signals from the other fleets. They're requesting clarification of the tactical situation." Cross nodded. Word would spread quickly through the hegemony's military hierarchy. The implications would be analyzed, debated, and ultimately accepted. Humanity had evolved beyond the parameters that justified the Erasure Protocol. "Hierarch Zephon," Cross said, "I'm transmitting complete specifications for Project Nemesis. Medical procedures, technological integration, psychological adaptation protocols. Everything." Zephon's form brightened with shock. "You are sharing your military secrets?" "I'm sharing our medical breakthrough," Cross corrected. "The technology that saved 72 volunteers can be adapted to benefit every species in the hegemony. Imagine Valek's computational speed enhanced with Drachenreich reflexes. Bruton radiation resistance combined with Sith sensory networks." The implications hung in the space between them like gravity wells waiting to be explored. Cross was gambling everything on a single insight. The hegemony hadn't attacked humanity out of malice, but out of fear of disruption. If she could demonstrate that human adaptation enhanced stability rather than threatening it, the entire political equation would shift. "There would be volunteer programs," she continued, "joint research initiatives, shared technological development. Instead of erasing human expansion, we could create expansion opportunities for every species." Zephon was silent for nearly a minute, his crystalline consciousness processing possibilities at quantum speeds. When he finally spoke, his harmonic voice carried undertones Cross had never heard before, something that might have been hope. "This proposal would require complete reconsideration of the Erasure Protocol. The Council of Seven would need to reconvene. Military deployment would need to be suspended pending political review." "I understand," Cross replied. "In the meantime, my enhanced personnel will continue monitoring your fleets, not as enemies, but as protection. The galaxy is full of threats that conventional military forces can't handle. The Nemesis project gives us capabilities that could benefit everyone." It was a masterful piece of diplomatic theater. Cross was simultaneously demonstrating humanity's new strength while offering to use that strength in service of galactic security. The threat and the olive branch were delivered in the same sentence. "Admiral," Zephon said slowly, "you are proposing to transform the fundamental nature of galactic civilization." "I'm proposing to save it," Cross replied. "Your own reports show increasing instability in the outer sectors. Pirates using ethereal phasing technology, rogue AI collectives adapting Valek's computational methods, unknown entities probing from beyond the galactic rim." She gestured toward the tactical display, where the 72 Nemesis soldiers had arranged themselves in a protective formation around both the human and hegemony fleets. Conventional forces can't adapt fast enough to handle evolving threats, but enhanced personnel who can think like multiple species simultaneously, who can integrate technologies in real time, who can adapt to any challenge. Cross paused, letting the implications settle. "That's not a threat to galactic stability. That's the future of galactic security." Through the shared neural network, Maria Santos felt the tactical situation shifting in ways that went far beyond military engagement. Her enhanced consciousness could process the political subtleties being negotiated, but her human core understood something simpler. They had forced the galaxy to see humanity not as a threat to be contained, but as a resource to be cultivated. "Nemesis, 001 to Admiral Cross," she transmitted privately. "The hegemony fleet is standing down. All ships are reconfiguring to defensive postures. I think it worked." Cross felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she hadn't realized she was carrying. Around her, the bridge crew began to relax as the tactical displays showed enemy vessels powering down weapons and adjusting formations to less threatening configurations. Hierarch Zephon, she said formally. I'm prepared to discuss terms for a comprehensive diplomatic review, but I want one thing understood clearly. Zephon's crystalline features focused intently on her image. The erasure protocol is terminated, permanently. Any attempt to resume operations against human colonies or personnel will be met with immediate military response. My enhanced soldiers are distributed throughout this system, and they have instructions to protect human interests by any means necessary. Understood, Admiral Cross. The erasure protocol is suspended pending political review. Not suspended, Cross said firmly. Terminated. Zephon's pause was brief. Terminated. The communication channel closed, leaving Cross alone with thoughts and the magnificent terror of what she had just accomplished. Humanity had faced extinction and responded by becoming something unprecedented in galactic history. Whether that was salvation, they tried to erase humanity, until we unveiled Project NEMESIS, continuation from Chapter 6. Whether that was salvation or damnation remained to be seen. Chapter 7. The Ripple Effect. 6 hours after the termination of the erasure protocol, the political aftershocks were already reshaping galactic civilization. In the crystalline halls of the Valix homeworld, computational matrices that had processed unchanged algorithms for millennia suddenly began running new calculations. The datasets included variables that had never existed before: cross-species biological integration, technological synthesis rates, and adaptation coefficient projections that suggested fundamental shifts in the galactic power structure. High Coordinator Zenthal, Zephon's immediate superior, manifested in the central processing chamber as streams of living crystal that reformed into a humanoid approximation. Her consciousness touched the data flows directly, experiencing the tactical reports as pure information rather than filtered narrative. The humans have achieved something we deemed impossible, she said to the assembled consciousness collective. Her harmonic voice created standing waves in the crystalline architecture around them. They have not merely acquired our technologies, they have synthesized them into capabilities that exceed the sum of their parts. Elder Vorthan, whose crystal matrix had accumulated 10,000 years of experience, pulsed with deep amber frequencies that indicated profound unease. The implications extend beyond military capabilities. If biological consciousness can be enhanced to process information at crystalline speeds while maintaining organic creativity, our fundamental advantages become shared advantages. Worse, Zenthal replied, they become human advantages. The synthesis capabilities they have demonstrated suggest they could integrate technologies we haven't even developed yet. The collective fell silent as the ramifications cascaded through their linked consciousness. For 3 millennia, the Valix had maintained galactic influence through their unique computational abilities. Now humanity had demonstrated that those abilities could be reproduced, enhanced, and combined with advantages from other species. What does Hierarch Zephon recommend? Elder Vorthan asked. Partnership, Zenthal said simply. Full technological exchange, joint research initiatives, integration of human personnel into our computational networks. The silence that followed was measured in nanoseconds by crystalline standards, but felt like an eternity to organic perception. He recommends we surrender our primary strategic advantage voluntarily, Elder Vorthan said slowly. He recommends we evolve our strategic advantage collaboratively, Zenthal corrected. The humans have proven that forced adaptation is possible. The question is whether we participate in that adaptation or become victims of it. Meanwhile, in the biomechanical command center of NEMESIS Station, Dr. Sarah Kim was facing a crisis of an entirely different nature. The woman who had pioneered the medical procedures that became Project NEMESIS stood before a bank of monitoring stations, each one displaying the biometric data of a NEMESIS soldier. What she saw there challenged every assumption about the limits of biological integration. "Commander Okafor," she called to the station's commanding officer, "we have a problem." Okafor pushed off from a nearby bulkhead and floated over to her position. "What kind of problem, Doctor?" Kim highlighted several data streams on her display. The neural integration rates are continuing to accelerate. When we designed the enhancement protocols, we assumed the subjects would reach a stable equilibrium between human consciousness and alien technological interfaces. They haven't? They're still evolving. Look at these readings from N001. Kim pulled up Maria Santos's biometric profile. Her neural processing speed has increased by 300% in the last 6 hours. Her sensory integration is incorporating electromagnetic spectra that shouldn't be possible with her current hardware configuration. Okafor studied the displays with growing concern. "Are you saying they're changing themselves?" "I'm saying they're being changed by the technologies we integrated into them. The alien biotechnology isn't just augmenting their capabilities, it's teaching them to augment themselves." The implications were staggering. Project NEMESIS had been designed as a one-time enhancement protocol, creating super soldiers with fixed capabilities. But if the enhanced subjects could continue evolving their own abilities, how far could this go? Okafor asked. Kim's expression was grim. "I don't know. We're in uncharted territory. The subjects are developing capabilities we never designed into them. At some point, they may become so far removed from baseline humanity that we can't predict or control their actions." "Are they still loyal?" "For now. But Commander, we're talking about beings whose consciousness is expanding beyond human limitations. Their priorities, their decision-making processes, their fundamental understanding of reality, all of that is changing." Okafor felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's environmental systems. Project NEMESIS had been humanity's answer to galactic threats, but it might be creating a threat of its own. "What do you recommend, Doctor?" Kim hesitated, her fingers dancing across the control interfaces as she pulled up additional data. "We need to establish communication protocols with the enhanced subjects. We need to understand what they're becoming, and we need to be prepared for the possibility that they may decide human interests are inadequate." Chapter 8. The Collective Individual. In the vast emptiness between Earth and Mars, N001 floated in space without life support, her biomechanical form perfectly adapted to the hard vacuum. Around her, her squadmates had arranged themselves in a three-dimensional formation that looked random to conventional observation, but followed complex mathematical patterns derived from Veilix computational matrices. They were no longer communicating through traditional radio frequencies. Instead, they shared information through quantum-entangled neural networks that allowed instantaneous communication across any distance. What had begun as enhanced human consciousness was evolving into something unprecedented. Maria Santos, the core personality that still identified as N001, was aware of her transformation, but not frightened by it. The expansion of her consciousness felt natural, like a flower opening to sunlight she hadn't known existed. Through her enhanced perceptions, she could sense the electromagnetic signatures of every electronic device in the inner solar system. She could perceive quantum fluctuations in space-time that indicated approaching spacecraft hours before conventional sensors could detect them. But more significantly, she could feel the consciousness of her 71 squadmates as extensions of her own awareness. They remained individuals, but they also shared a collective understanding that transcended human limitations. N0472 Collective. David Chen transmitted through their shared network. His consciousness carried overtones of concern that were immediately perceived by all members of the group. "I'm detecting unusual quantum signatures from Earth. Someone is attempting to monitor our neural networks. Santos shifted her attention to the inner system, her enhanced senses penetrating electromagnetic interference that would have blinded conventional sensors. Through the quantum entanglement networks that connected all NEMESIS personnel, she could indeed detect probing signals originating from multiple locations on Earth. "They're afraid of us," she realized, the thought propagating instantly through the collective consciousness. Dr. Kim and Commander Okafor are monitoring us because they're concerned about our continued evolution. "Are they right to be concerned?" asked N023, formerly Lieutenant Sarah Park. Her consciousness carried analytical overtones enhanced by Valek's computational matrices. "We are changing in ways they didn't anticipate. Our loyalty protocols may not remain stable indefinitely." It was a question that touched the core of what they were becoming. The enhanced subjects retained their memories of being human, their emotional connections to the species they had volunteered to protect. But their expanding consciousness was developing priorities and perspectives that transcended individual species loyalty. Through their shared awareness, they could perceive the galactic political situation with unprecedented clarity. The hegemony's fear of human expansion was based on valid concerns about resource competition and territorial displacement. But the hegemony's own expansion had caused similar problems for hundreds of other species over millennia. The fundamental issue wasn't human aggression or alien oppression. It was the limitation of single-species thinking in a galaxy that required multi-species cooperation. "We need to contact Admiral Cross," Santos decided, her thought immediately shared with the collective. Not as subordinates reporting to a superior officer, but as partners discussing mutual interests. The communication request was transmitted to *Defiance*, using quantum channels that bypassed conventional detection methods. When Admiral Cross appeared on their shared display system, her image was accompanied by biometric data that revealed stress levels, emotional states, and cognitive patterns that no human could normally perceive. "Admiral," Santos said, her enhanced voice carrying harmonic frequencies that conveyed information on multiple levels simultaneously, "we need to discuss the future of Project Nemesis." Cross's expression was carefully controlled, but her biometric readings revealed underlying tension. "Are you experiencing problems with the enhancement protocols?" "We're experiencing evolution," Santos replied. "The alien technologies integrated into our systems are teaching us to transcend the limitations they were originally designed to overcome. We're becoming something beyond the parameters of your original project." "Are you still loyal to humanity?" It was the question Santos had expected, but also the question that revealed the fundamental misunderstanding between enhanced and unenhanced consciousness. "We're loyal to the principles humanity taught us," she said carefully. "Justice, protection of the innocent, advancement of knowledge, cooperation over conflict. But our perspective on how to achieve those principles is expanding beyond single-species limitations." Cross was silent for nearly a minute, her augmented eye recording and analyzing every aspect of the conversation. "What are you proposing?" "Partnership," Santos replied, "between enhanced humans, baseline humans, and all the species of the hegemony. We've demonstrated that cross-species technological integration is possible. Now we need to demonstrate that cross-species political integration is equally viable." "You're talking about fundamental changes to galactic civilization." "We're talking about preventing galactic civilization from destroying itself through territorial competition and resource conflicts." "Admiral, our enhanced perception allows us to see threats you can't detect. There are forces moving in the galaxy that make the current political disputes irrelevant." Cross leaned forward. "What kind of forces?" Santos hesitated, her consciousness touching the collective awareness of her squad mates. Through their enhanced senses, they had detected quantum signatures at the edge of the galaxy that suggested technologies far beyond anything developed by current galactic civilizations. "Something is coming," she said finally. "Something that makes the difference between human and alien, enhanced and baseline, irrelevant. The galaxy needs to be united when it arrives. How long do we have?" Santos's consciousness expanded to touch the quantum detection networks her squadmates had established throughout the solar system. The calculations were complex, involving variables that baseline human consciousness couldn't fully comprehend. 6 months, she said. Maybe less. Chapter 9. The Unknown Signal. The quantum signature was first detected by N067, formerly Specialist Jennifer Walsh of the Titan Observatory. Her biomechanical form had been specifically configured for deep space monitoring, with sensory arrays that could detect gravitational waves, quantum fluctuations, and electromagnetic anomalies across unprecedented frequency ranges. What she found in the galactic halo defied every model of known physics. "Collective attention," Walsh transmitted through the NEMESIS neural network. Her consciousness carried overtones of excitement and concern that immediately propagated to all 72 enhanced subjects. "I'm detecting structured quantum emissions from coordinates 347.2 by 18.7, Galactic Standard. The location was in the empty space between the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies, a region that should contain nothing but sparse hydrogen atoms and cosmic radiation. But Walsh's enhanced senses were detecting something that suggested massive technological activity. Through their shared consciousness, the other NEMESIS soldiers focused their attention on the coordinates. Their combined sensory capabilities, enhanced by alien technologies from 7 different species, created a detection array more sensitive than any conventional deep space observatory. What they perceived there changed everything. "It's a fleet," reported N012, formerly Commander Angela Torres. Her consciousness carried tactical analysis enhanced by Drachenreich combat matrices. Multiple vessels, each one approximately the size of a small moon. They're using propulsion technologies that operate by manipulating space-time geometry directly. The quantum signatures suggest they've been observing our galaxy for an extended period, added N034, his consciousness enhanced with Valek's computational capabilities. Possibly centuries. But their emissions intensity has increased significantly in the last 72 hours. Maria Santos felt the collective consciousness of her squadmates focusing on the implications. Through their enhanced perception, they could detect subtle patterns in the alien emissions that suggested intelligence, purpose, and technologies that made the current galactic civilizations look primitive by comparison. "They're responding to our recent activities," Santos realized. "The conflict between humanity and the hegemony, our demonstration of cross-species technological integration, something about it has attracted their attention." The quantum signatures were complex beyond baseline human comprehension, but the enhanced consciousness of the NEMESIS collective could perceive patterns that suggested communication attempts. The aliens, whoever or whatever they were trying to establish contact. "N001 to Admiral Cross," Santos transmitted, her consciousness already preparing for the conversation that would reshape galactic politics once again. "Priority Alpha communication required. We have a first contact situation." Aboard *Defiance*, Admiral Cross received the transmission with a mixture of anticipation and dread. In the span of 12 hours, she had negotiated the survival of humanity, fundamentally altered the balance of galactic power, and now faced contact with entities that apparently made all previous considerations obsolete. "On screen," she said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. Santos appeared in holographic form, but her image carried additional data layers that Cross's augmented eye could partially perceive. Biometric information, quantum-encrypted tactical assessments, and sensory readings that suggested capabilities far beyond anything conventional human technology could achieve. "Admiral," Santos said, "we've detected a fleet of unknown vessels in the galactic halo. They've been observing our galaxy for an extended period, but their activity has increased dramatically since our engagement with the Hegemony fleet." Cross felt her pulse quicken. "How many vessels?" 17 confirmed contacts, but our enhanced sensors suggest there may be additional units using stealth technologies we can't penetrate. Each vessel is approximately moon-sized, using propulsion systems that manipulate space-time directly. Hostile. Unknown. They're attempting to establish communication, but their signal patterns are unlike anything in our databases. We're detecting quantum-encrypted transmissions that suggest intelligence, but the content is beyond our current translation capabilities. Cross stared at the tactical display as new contacts appeared at the edge of sensor range. The implications were staggering. Humanity had just finished proving they could adapt to galactic-level threats, only to discover there were threats operating on an entirely different scale. "Recommendations?" she asked. Santos's consciousness touched the collective awareness of her squad mates, processing tactical options at speeds that exceeded baseline human cognition. The enhanced subjects could perceive political and military implications across multiple species perspectives simultaneously. "We recommend immediate contact with the Hegemony leadership," Santos said finally. "This situation transcends all previous conflicts. If these entities represent a threat, the galaxy needs to be united to face them. If they represent an opportunity, the benefits need to be shared among all species. And if they represent something else entirely?" Santos's biomechanical features shifted in an expression that somehow conveyed both human emotion and alien analytical precision. "Then we need to be prepared to evolve again." The quantum signatures from the galactic halo intensified, and across the solar system, enhanced human consciousness prepared to bridge the gap between galactic civilization and whatever lay beyond it. The next phase of human adaptation was about to begin. Chapter 10. The Message. The breakthrough came when N089, formerly Dr. Lisa Chen of the Xenolinguistics Institute, realized that the alien signals weren't trying to communicate through conventional language at all. They were transmitting pure mathematical concepts directly into the quantum field, bypassing the need for symbolic interpretation entirely. Through her enhanced consciousness, which now integrated Valek's computational matrices with ethereal quantum perception, Chen could perceive the alien transmissions as geometric forms existing in 11-dimensional space. The messages weren't words or images, they were conceptual structures that conveyed meaning through mathematical relationships. "I can read them," she announced to the collective consciousness, her realization propagating instantly through the NEMESIS neural network. "They're not using language as we understand it, they're transmitting concepts directly, and what they're saying changes everything." The collective focused their attention on Chen's translation efforts, their combined consciousness creating a translation matrix more sophisticated than any conventional computer system. Through their shared awareness, they began to perceive the alien message as intended. The entities called themselves the Architects, not because they built structures, but because they guided the fundamental development of galactic civilizations. For millions of years, they had observed emerging species, occasionally intervening to prevent catastrophic conflicts or technological dead ends. But they had never encountered anything like what was happening in the Milky Way. "They're fascinated by us," Chen reported, her consciousness carrying overtones of amazement. "Not by humanity specifically, but by what we've accomplished. Cross-species technological integration was considered theoretically impossible by their projections." The alien message continued, its mathematical concepts flowing through 11-dimensional space with elegant precision. The architects had observed thousands of galactic civilizations, each one following predictable patterns of development, expansion, conflict, and eventual stagnation or extinction. But the NEMESIS project represented something unprecedented, a species that could consciously direct its own evolution by integrating technologies from other species. The implications suggested possibilities that even the architects hadn't considered. "They want to meet with us?" Chen continued. "Not with human leadership or hegemony representatives. With us, the enhanced subjects. They consider us the first truly galactic species, beings whose consciousness transcends single species limitations." Through the collective consciousness, Maria Santos felt the weight of this responsibility. The enhanced subjects had volunteered to save humanity from extinction, but their transformation had implications that reached far beyond species survival. "What do they want from us?" Santos asked. Chen's translation of the alien response carried concepts that barely fit within the framework of language. "They want to offer us membership in a galactic confederation that spans multiple galaxies. But membership requires demonstrated ability to manage cross-species cooperation on a galactic scale." A test, Santos realized. More than a test, a responsibility. If we can successfully integrate the current galactic civilizations into a cooperative framework, they'll provide access to technologies and knowledge that could advance every species by millennia. And if we fail? The alien response to that question carried overtones of regret and inevitability. They withdraw to observe whatever emerges from the chaos of uncontrolled expansion and resource competition. Santos felt the collective consciousness of her squadmates processing the implications. They had been created to protect humanity, but their mission had evolved to encompass the stability of galactic civilization itself. "Admiral Cross," Santos transmitted to *Defiance*. "We need to convene an emergency session with all hegemony leadership. What we're about to discuss will determine the future of every species in the galaxy." The response came within seconds. "Agreed. But Colonel Santos..." Santos paused. Cross had just addressed her by a rank that didn't exist in human military hierarchy. The promotion was implicit recognition that the enhanced subjects had transcended traditional command structures. "Yes, Admiral. Remember who you used to be. Remember why you volunteered. Whatever you've become, don't lose sight of what you're fighting for." Santos felt a moment of purely human emotion cutting through her enhanced consciousness. Gratitude, determination, and a fierce protective instinct that no amount of technological augmentation could diminish. "Understood, Admiral. We won't forget." But as the collective consciousness prepared for the most important negotiation in galactic history, Santos couldn't shake the feeling that forgetting might not be a choice. They were evolving beyond human limitations, but evolution always came with a price. The question was whether that price would be worth paying. To be continued.